Good afternoon, everyone. I, Sadra Shanaz, Assistant Professor, Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, Integral University, Lucknow, would like to welcome you all in this another session of our value-added course entitled Ancient History from the Purview of Civil Services Examination. I hope you all are taking advantage of this course. Now I would like to introduce today's expert, Dr. Khwaja Danish Hamid, Assistant Professor at Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, Integral University, Lucknow. He has done his PhD entitled Pakhtun Movement in Pakistan, Origins, Development and Transformation 1957 to 1986 from Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. He has presented and published many papers in national and international seminars and conferences. The topic he has taken to speak is Vedic Age, Theories on the Homeland of Aryans. The Vedic period of Indian culture comprises a long history of ancient India with specific beliefs and religious behavior. Welcome, Dr. Khwaja Danish Hamid. Now you can proceed with your lecture.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. So the topic I need to speak on is uh, Vedic Age, Module 2, that is, and I will be speaking on the homeland of Aryan theory. Good afternoon to the Chair again, and I am going to make an epistemological and ontological survey. Going to analyze it through ontological lenses. So first, I will be going into the why I have chosen an epistemological survey of this module. For that purpose, it's necessary for us to know what is epistemology. Epistemology is a branch of philosophy deals with the sources of knowledge. Specifically, epistemology is concerned with possibilities, nature, sources, and limitation of knowledge in the field of study. Alternatively, epistemology can be explained as the study of criteria by which a researcher classifies what does and what does not constitute knowledge. In simple words, epistemology focuses on what is known to be true. In the presentation, my aim is to studying the topic using epistemological lenses that covers entire Vedic age, administrative, socio-economical, and of Vedic age, inclusive of the Aryan theory of migration, theory of origin. Now, why I'm making an so first of all, again, it is necessary for us to know what ontology is. Ontology is a system of belief that reflects an interpretation of an individual about what constitute a means interpretation of historians regarding Vedic age and the origins of Aryans. I will further try to explore ontological question how Vedic has been interpreted or misinterpreted, how Vedic was Vedic age, and why it was known as Vedic age. So the module that is Vedic age, which have been assigned to me, covers the following sub-modules, which I will be telling you. Theories on the homeland of Aryan, which I will be discussing today. Political structure of Vedic age. Administration of later Vedic period. Economic and society of Vedic age. Vedic religion and literature. Comparison between Vedic and later Vedic period. So before going into another further detail, we need to know what Veda is. What is the term Veda? What is Veda? So the word Veda is derived from the root vid, which means to know. Excuse me. The word Veda means the sacred knowledge contained in the text known as Vedic text. Two categories of text can be Vedic literature. These are mantras and Brahman. The mantras category forms the core of Vedic text and has separate collections. There are the Rigveda, the Samveda, the Yajurveda, and the Atharva Veda. The Brahmanas are not to be confused. Brahmanas are not to be confused with the Brahminical class or are process or the prose text containing the explanation of mantras as well as sacrifice rituals. The four Vedas together with the Brahmanas are also known as Shruti or hearing, that which was directly heard by the sages. When I say sages, these are the intellectual of those of Vedic era. Means these people were interpreting the or collecting the datas, jotting it down on the paper, on or you can say the leaf that was the that was the means to communicate. And they were the people who were responsible for gathering these knowledge and should be credited with gathering these knowledge, and also explaining the that age with time, space, and materialization. That happens to be the three most important aspect of history writing. So the Aranyakas, literally forest treatise, and the Upanishad sitting down besides are mainly appendices to the Brahmanas. Means if you are going to read them, you are going to understand these Aranyakas and Upanishads gives you a very good platform for understanding a particular text, especially the Brahmanas. These are also known as end of Vedas containing philosophical discussion. Means it's sort of a, I would like to elaborate on this, that it is sort of an end of Vedas where a sort of a prologue is epilogue is being written, and it is it is a sort of a celebration that Vedas have achieved so much, and the sages of those era have written and analyzed the nature in such a way that it is complete now. Now it's open for interpretation by the people of the time to come. Vedantas can also be termed as text that is containing philosophical discussions in which ecclesiology and ontology and epistemology are also a part of. So now I will be switching over to the question, what is Vedic age? Why it is known as Vedic age? So now coming to the topic, that is the Vedic period, that is between 1750 to 500 BCE, is named for the Vedas, the oldest scriptures in Hinduism, which was composed during this period. The period can be divided into early Vedic, that is 1750 to 1000 BC, later Vedic 1000 to 500 BC period. The term Veda is derived from Sanskrit language. It means with, that is again to know. The description of the age in the Vedas is known as Vedic age, because it's a sort of a it is a sort of a text that takes you back into the history, and when you read Ved in its sacred language, you get to know about what kind of situation that prevailed in that era, what was the environmental condition, what was the socio-economic condition, what was the political condition of that age. The description of the age in Vedas are sort of a thing that's bring that scenario in front of your eyes. The Vedas are also known as Samhitas. The Vedas are closely associated with Aryans. Hence, it is important to know what does Aryan means. So I'm switching over to what does the word Aryan mean. Aryan name originally given to the people who were speaking archaic Indo-European language, uh, and who were thought to have settled in pure historic time in ancient Iran and northern Indian subcontinent. So let me give you a connection over here that I will be just trying to lay your focus on the fact that this Aryan theory is very much there to the fascists who were there in the time of Nazi Germany. So that's why they are being. It is being said that they spoke Indo-European language, and it's very difficult to classify what was Indo-European language, and then excuse me, who have settled in the prehistoric times in ancient Iran and northern Indian subcontinent. Then again, it's a sort of a contradictory theory that Aryans were taken out to be people who are coming directly from Europe. Excuse me. People who were coming from Europe were this type of theories are usually ethnocentric. Why I'm saying this ethnocentric? Because it is proving that civilization started from Europe, and excuse me, the civilization was meant to be a part of Europe, and the whole world was uncivilized. Sort of a widespread burden theory. It complements widespread burden theory that it's the duty of the whites men to civilize the other areas which were uncivilized. Means the Indians were treated as uncivilized. So the term Aryans have originally associated with those people who were speaking archaic Indo-European language during the prehistoric time. So, where the Aryans originated from? This is another question that arises to our mind. Origins of the Aryans were from where they came from is still a subject of debate. Many historians refer to the term Aryan with those who spoke Indo-European languages, including English, Russian, Greek, German, Persian, Latin, and Sanskrit. These people are considered to have settled in ancient Iran and northern Indian subcontinent in prehistoric time. During the mid 19th century, the theory of an Aryan race developed and prevailed until mid 20th century. Such theory suggested that homeland of ancestors of Indo-European people were located in northern Europe, which means Indo-Europeans were originally from Nordic race. Again, I will say it's an ethnocentric opinion because there's still lots of research that needs to be done genetically and linguistically. So before arriving or jumping to conclusions, it is a must that we try to analyze this from the framework that it's genetically important to analyze the historical facts. Means the remains of human beings like skeleton and other parts of human being, and then carbon date it and put and then analyze it. As far as that European the linguistic part of the debate is concerned, it's still a very vague phenomenon that if you have two words of similar origin, or you can say that two words of similar phonetics, you believe that it is from it must be having a similar origin. It is sometimes a very vague thing to believe. For example, there are many historians who says that the word pater, Peter, father, these have an Aryanic origins. means they have seem to have been from one tribe. That must be having its center of origin in somewhere in Europe or Iran. But the problem with such kind of theories that they believe that they have been interpreted by mostly white people, Orientalist lot, and they believe that Orientalists believe that the white people are this, they have the tendency to believe, which is reflected in their works as well, that the white people are the superior of all race and they are on the top of the civilization. So they propose that ancient India was possibly invaded and conquered by light-skinned Aryans from the north. Again, light-skinned things associated with the European continent. Again, over here, ethnocentric opinion is given by various historians. According to the hypothesis, modes of social organization, religion, literature of these people eventually aided in shaping Indian culture, especially the Vedic religion. So it is regarded that Aryan crossed the Hindu Kush mountain and migrated into India subcontinent 1500 BCE. But migration will be, I think, a better word to use. Why? Because we don't arrive to judgment that whether this migration ended up as an invasion or whether this migration was a simple movement of the herders from one place to another place, that is within Indian subcontinent through Khyber Pass or other passes that were prevalent in the Hindu Kush mountains. So my question that triggers to my mind when whether is there anything like Aryan or it was just a concept born out of a racist set of mind where the whitesman burden theory is a very prominent factor, and it's important to know what the Aryans actually were. So I would like to say that Aryans term itself is very debatable in my mind. Why? Who are the Aryans and from where they came from? Again, a very controversial topic. The term Aryan was mostly used in the text, definitely, no doubt. But it was propagated by Max Muller, much more a European scholar, much more than any other scholar, who was an Orientalist himself. So, from where did the Aryan came from exactly? We have to discuss it now. There are different theories associated with Aryans, their origins, and possible migration or invasion in the Indian subcontinent. While the Indo-Iranian people use the term Aryans as self-designated, the Indic people of Vedic period in India were closely associated to Iranian people. Use it in an ethnic label for themselves. The term used by the Indo-Iranian people also forms the etymological of the country name Iran. It is regarded that by many Aryans crossed uh, Hindu Kush mountain and migrated to India. Now, this migration factor is a debatable concept. Why they migrated? Probably there must have been some kind of famine or disease that hit the cities of Aryans. And when they entered India, it is said they attacked the Dravidians who were peacefully living over here. So a theory suggests that these light skinned Aryans must have played an instrumental role in shaping the culture of this place. So there are many theories associated with these kind of people, these Aryan people and their origins, which I will be discussing now. First and the most prominent theory that comes to our mind is Central Asian theory. This theory is proposed by an Orientalist by the name of Professor Max Muller, a German scholar of comparative language. As per this theory, the Aryans originally lived in Central Asia. With the comparative study of Avesta, Iranian texts, and the Vedas, one finds a striking linguistic relationship between them of not just words but also concepts. The interchangeability between the H and the S's, an incredible consistency in the change as seen in hepta, name that is analogous to Hindu, Sapta Sindhu, Ahura, Asura, Soma, Soma, Daha, Dasa, further substantiate the claim. Now, coming up to the European theory. Over here, Sir William Jones of Giles, Hungary, and Schroeder of France, Morgan of Western Siberia are supporter of this theory. Because I will not like to enter into the debate of white man burden theory and all the racist theory, but as far as you know, these kind of uh, area even in contemporary time are known for neo-Nazi battalions. Even they are playing a critical role in contemporary Ukraine-Russia conflict. As per this theory, the Aryan inhabited Europe and voyaged to various places, and the Aryans all who came to India were an offshoot of Europeans. So again, over here we are seeing that Eurocentric theory is being given. The proponent of this theory established the resemblance of Sanskrit with European languages. And for example, the Sanskrit word matri and pitri are similar to Latin mater and pater. Suryas and Marutakash of the Kissite Mesopotamia inscriptions are equivalent to Vedic Surya and Marut. So the theory of North Pole Arctic theory. This theory had an indigenous origin. It was according to Bal Gangadhar Tilak. The Aryans came from North Arctic region. So the concept of Yati being our ancestors is also being confirmed by this theory. That is Bal Gangadhar Tilak, commented that Rigveda comprises specific reference to a place where harsh, cold, long days and nights of 6 months are found. This means that it confirms that the Aryans had an origin from North Pole. Now there's a Tibetan theory that was propounded by Swami Dayanand Saraswati. It says that Tibet was the original home of the Aryans with reference to the Vedas and the Aryan text. There was another theory popularly known as the Indian theory by Dr. A.C. Das, Ganganath Jha, Sir L.D. Kalla, Sir D.S. Dwivedi. According to this theory, the Aryans were the recent of Sapt Sindhu, means they were resident of Sapt Sindhu region. They were original inhabitant of Sapt Sindhu area. This region stretched from River Indus, reaching up to Saraswati River. Kashmir and Punjab were also under this region. The sacrificial ritual of Vedic Aryan point to their origin, means the Ashwamedh Yajna and all kinds of yajnas which were prevalent during this age also connects it to the Aryan culture. The river hymns of the Rigveda mentions the name of the rivers of the region. The flora and fauna mentioned are mostly similar to Himalayan region. Regarding the affinity of the Indian and European languages, this theory states that in the language of Aryans, there is plethora of Sanskrit words, but this is not the case with the latter. If Aryans had to come from outside, their ancient literature, that was the Vedas, should have been found there. But no Vedic literature has been found outside India. The most accepted view is that there was a series of Aryan immigration and they came to the subcontinent as immigrants. The earliest Indo-Aryan lived in the geographic area of eastern Afghanistan, Punjab, and the fingers of western Uttar Pradesh. Some rivers of Afghanistan, such as River Kuba, that is now known as River Kabul, and the River Indus, Sindhus, and its tributaries are mentioned in the Rigvedas. The five tributaries that are mentioned were Vitsa, Byas, Vipasa, Chenab, As, Ravi as Parushini, Satluj at Sutudiri. The Sindhu, identical with the Indus, is the river par excellence of the Aryans. Hence, this river is considered to be the most sacred of all to the Aryans. Another river that is mentioned, excuse me, is that of Saraswati, that is lost in the sands of Rajasthan, probably because of desertification or meandering. A river must have meandered or changed its course because of meandering, as we see in the case of South American rivers like that and other rivers. They must have changed and hydrological cycle must have been altered by because of this. The area represented by it is covered by Ghaggar River. So, the region in which the Aryan first settled in India is called the river of seven, land of seven rivers. Of seven rivers was originally considered to be the place of from where the Aryan originally belonged or must have inhabited that place. So now the question that arises in our mind is, when did Aryans came to India? Opinions which support the Aryan invasion theory differ with respect to expansion of Aryans in the Indian subcontinent. One opinion suggests that the Aryans came in large group and initially settled in With the time, they relocated near the Gangetic Valley and in the northeastern and southern part of India. During 1840, German linguist Friedrich Max Muller translated one of the four sacred canonical ancient texts, that is Shruti, of Hinduism, the Rigveda. According to Max Muller, he found evidence that a group of Hindu Brahmins who described themselves as Arya must have invaded ancient India and have chased away the original inhabitants of India, who were the Dravidians down south. He also believed that Aryans were linguistically category instead of racial one. Naturally, he will believe that Aryans were a category as he was an Orientalist. But applying science to it, that if we apply and do a genetic mapping of whether these Aryans belong to a race or whether they were a linguistic group, it's very difficult to classify because of scarcity of authentic sources. We have sources, but they are not that authentic because in ancient India, always we have this problem of authenticity. But I will slightly support this invasion theory of Aryans because when Mongol invasion can happen, and when Mongol had a disaster in the Islamic Empire, wiping the Islamic Empire completely, that stretched from Baghdad to Transoxiana and other regions as well, and throwing the caliph into the Tigris River, then anything can happen. If Mongols can invade, who were predominantly Buddhist and inward looking tribe, then anything can happen of this sort, and this theory can be supported. So, coming back to Max Muller also believed that Aryans were even much more than a linguist category, but definitely not racial one. And eventually, scholars applied this theory to suggest their own perspective of racial conquest through Indian Ocean and South Asia. A New Zealand polymath, Robert Traeger, opined in 1885 that a wave of Aryan populace overwhelmed across India and extended towards south through the East Indian archipelago island and hit as far as New Zealand. This theory is slightly controversial for me because it's very difficult to digest it, in fact. Because if we if we look at the empire of Cholas, they also stretched towards the Indonesian archipelago. Till till there was but that was possible in much later age when navigability and the maritime trade was in this region. Previously, there was not kind of connectivity in this region because of lack of say hydrology engineering, marine engineering skills, because that time the Dravidians must have not developed that kind of technology because they were predominantly land based people who had such very less knowledge of seafaring. So it's very difficult to believe that they must have developed such kind of uh, boats or ships for that matter and must have navigated till New Zealand. So Edward Traeger opinion matlab, is not a very acceptable one for me. And I believe this theory must have complemented the racist part of the British Empire as well, because in this era, it was sort of a norm to prove the white as racially superior and civilizationally also superior. So again, we come to see that this whitesman Verden theory is playing a role over here, and ethnocentrism is clearly visible. According to other school of thought, ancient India was enriched with highly developed civilization, Indus Valley civilization before the Aryans migrated. The civilization prospered in the basins of Indus River. It extended from what is today northwestern India and Pakistan to the north of Afghanistan. The Aryans, a large group of nomadic cattle raiders, migrated, not invaded, to Indian subcontinent, crossing the Hindu Kush mountain by 1500 BCE. This possible migration was viewed by many as invasion. A group of scholars believe that emergence of Aryan led to the downfall of Indus Valley civilization. However, this theory presently does not hold unanimous acceptance. One of the argues that first Indo-Aryans possibly migrated into northwestern India via Punjab, adjoining areas in the middle of the second before Christ BC. They crossed the passes of Hindu Kush mountains, and thereafter they defeated a group of people named in the Vedic text as Dasa or Dasyu to spread further. The exact routes taken by these Aryans to enter the Indian subcontinent and their dwellings are, however, not given by documentary or archaeological evidence. Many assume that about 200 before Christ, the Indo-Aryans left Proto-Aryan homeland. French archaeologist R. Grishman said that Indo-Aryans left in two groups. According to him, the first group went to northern Mesopotamia and the second reached India while crossing the Hindu Kush. The other theory that had gained ground with the time is the Aryans are indigenous to India, means they have origins within India. There are no circumstantial evidences to confirm that Aryan invaded India as suggested by the British and European scholars. The ancient Hindu texts like Dharma Shastra, Sutras mentions the term Aryavrat for parts of Indian subcontinent. The term in Sanskrit literally means group of noble or excellent ones, that is Aryas. That is the land of Aryans. Supporters of story mentioned that Buddha, a Kshatriya, was noble birth and was also called as Ariputra, that is son of Aryas, by his followers. And in some case, Mahavira is also treated as Ariputra. So naturally, after discussing the Aryans about of Aryans extensively, the question arises into our mind: what are the associated with Aryans in order to separate and filter who the Aryans are? Let's go into this discussion. According to linguistic studies, the Aryan language garnered dominance over the local languages after the Aryans migrated into Indian subcontinent. With the time, they also embraced an agricultural lifestyle that became widely established around 1000 BCE. Although there are no historical record of such era, a mythical record exists in the form of Vedas. These are excuse me. These are highly regarded ancient Indian religious texts composed in Sanskrit, that is Vedic Sanskrit. Although Vedas included stories of military conflict and hostilities, such legends are not manifested by any evidence, and thus the question of historical reliability of the account remains unanswered. So, previously I was also discussing whether there was an Aryan invasion or migration. So, let's test the theory that there was an Aryan invasion or not. So, I have attempted to relate the various post Harappan cultures with the Aryans. The painted grey ware, which have been dated between 900 BCE to approximately 500 BCE, has been reportedly connected with Aryan craftsmanship. Their argument is based on inferences which historians make from analysis of 152 texts or hymns. Hence, archaeologists follow linguistic similarities found between Rigveda and Avesta. So, if we do a comparative analysis of Zend Avesta and Rigveda, we are arriving to certain very controversial conclusions. The historians try to find similarities in pottery forms, painting, ceramics, forms of copper object, etc., between post Harappan and West Asian Iranian Chalcolithic assemblage. Such similarities were magnified to support the view that Aryans were a group of people who migrated from West Asia to the Indian subcontinent. So over here, we see that such kind of theories are being influenced by the, I will say, international politics. So, in order to get a true and acceptable, universally acceptable theory, because everyone is trying to prove itself, every nation is trying to prove itself, and by associating themselves with Aryans, that we were the center of the civilization and we were the supreme of the supreme race. Literally, and archaeological works were made to support one another in order to validate the notion of migration. Linguistic similarities between the Rig Veda and Avesta are not that disputed, but still there are some disputes. But such similarities do not really suggest large scale migration of people into Indian subcontinent. Secondly, the similarities which have been found between Chalcolithic artifacts of India and those of Western Asian are only occasional. They are not to be found like a widespread phenomenon. They also do not suggest large scale migration of people. The concept of an Aryan, as stated before, cannot be equated with any particular type of pottery. It also does not have any ethical or racial significance. The Aryan is therefore, at the best, a vague concept related to linguistic similarity between people. In this context, one should take into account the following points suggested by archaeological excavation. First, the early scholars believe that Indo-Aryans caused the downfall of Harappan civilization by destroying the Harappan towns and cities. They quoted Rigvedic hymns which invoke Indra to destroy the dwellers of the forts. So Indra is the destroyer of forts. That's very interesting, and it is testifying the origins of Indra as an Aryan god. Basically, when we talk about Aryans, the thing that comes to our mind is that a fair-skinned people with long hair, blue eyes, sitting on the chariot and with a dagger attacking people. So this has been a stereotype for the Aryans that has been developed by the Orientalist, or as well as same time it has been developed by many white-skinned historians who believe in white man burden theory. So, so the archaeological evidences has shown that the decline of Harappan civilization was not caused by large-scale destruction, but was brought by an alien invading group. That being the fair-skinned, blue-eyed, and well bodily built-up people who are supposed to be riding chariot or horses from Europe, who that were used for military inroads, and they drove these people out of the northern India down south. So I believe that when Mongol invasion can happen once again, then such type of also happen. Because if you look down to our medieval history, we see Mongols destroying Halaku Khan, Kublai Khan, Genghis Khan, destroying the Islamic hinterlands and completely causing havoc and destroying even the center for learning of Islam, that was Baghdad at that time. He was portrayed as by many of the Muslim historians like uh, Barney and other historians as as a havoc that was inflicted on by Allah or God, whatever we say, on the Muslim bad deeds. So the second theory is that attempts to make that painted grey ware with the Aryans also do not receive strong support from archaeological evidence. The painted grey ware cultures were related to Aryans. Then, keeping the theory of invasion in mind, we should have found this pottery types in the areas of Bawalpuri, Punjab, that is along the route taken by the so-called migrants. However, we find these pottery types confined to a particular geographical region comprising Haryana, Upper Ganga Basin, and eastern Rajasthan. Third, and the last, it was earlier thought that there existed a time gap and hence a cultural discontinuity between the late Harappan and post Harappan Chalcolithic period occurred. However, recent excavation at Bhagwanpur, Daderi, Haryana, and Manda, Jammu have shown that the late Harappan and the painted grey ware could be found together without any bricks. Hence, invasions cannot be proved on the basis of excavated sites. So, 1750 BCE were the towns of Harappan civilization, and such artifacts and seals, weights and measures, etc., that is articles connected with trades and urbanism. The rural structure period continued into the second and the first millennium BC. A variation found in the archaeological post Harappan period in terms of pottery, metal implements, and other objects may have represented regional variations in Indian Chalcolithic culture. Archaeological evidences relating to the period between second millennium BCE and the first millennium BCE thus have been helping us by modifying existing views regarding Vedic Aryans and I believe, in several ways. First, there is no substantial proof of 153 Vedic period by archaeology, area 153. But there was a large scale migration of people from Central to Western Asia, West Asia into the Indian subcontinent around 1500 BC. Secondly, archaeologically, there is no proof that Aryan destroyed the Harappan civilization and laid the foundation of new Indian civilization, because there are many alternative theories as well. Because some historians say of who have extensively studied the Harappan or the Indus Valley civilization, they say that it was due to the spread of malaria or other waterborne diseases and decline or uh, collapse of Harappan civilization. So, although the fact reportedly repeats or refers to hostilities and wars between tribes, they were so-called clashes between Aryans and Indian communities and cultures are not documented in archaeology. However, since the Rigveda is the earliest collection of religious hymns available to us, it's important as a document of history, and it is immensely important. Yes, it is immensely important because the uh, time, space, and materialization. When we read the Rigveda, we relive those moments which the hermits or the sages of those era must have gone through. The hymns provide such insights into various aspects of earlier society as would not have been available in archaeological evidence. From them, we get insights regarding the nature of the economy, social organization, kingship, kinship, political organization, religious and cosmological beliefs, and so on. Much of the information is relevant or to us for sort of understanding the nature of Indian society at later stages. We now therefore turn to what we have learned from Rig Veda about early Vedic society. So Rig Veda teaches us that this text was compiled and processed, and and the analysis were registered in this text related to time, space, and materialization by the hermits who were predominantly Aryans. These Aryans were the people who were portrayed as largely associated with European people. European people means whosoever wanted to prove themselves civilizationally superior used to associate themselves with the Aryans. So the only Vedic, the only source of Vedic culture is now Vedic age. That is divided into early Vedic age and the later Vedic age. Let me go into this detail as well, because this platform will help you to understand the theories of invasion of Aryans or migration of Aryans using this platform. So, early Vedic literature or Rig Vedic culture, that is of 1500 to 1000 BC, it includes Rig Veda, Samhita, and other texts of family. They are called family books in, as they were composed and is attributed to the families of certain sages as Vishwamitra, Atri, Gatri Samda, Vasishtha, and Bhardavaja. Then, second period, that is the later Vedic age, the later Vedic culture, which will help. This will also help you to maintain the connectivity between the submodules, which I am discussing right now. It included books 1, 8, 9, and 10 of the Rigvedic Samhita, the Samhita of Samaveda, the Yajur Veda, the Atharva Veda, and the Brahmanas, the Aranyakyas, and the Upanishads attached to all the four Vedas. So now, after discussing such type of things, we were to look into the religious life of the Aryans, whether these Aryans believed in religion or not. That has also be to be tested. The religious belief of the Vedic people are reflected in the hymns of Veda. The venerated they venerated the natural forces around them, means they worship them, wind, water, rain, thunder, fire, which they could not control, and invented nature and divinity conceived in human forms, which are mostly masculine. Very few female deities were venerated, that is, worshipped, and this clearly shows the status of women in Vedic society. The religion thus reflected the patriarchal society and was that of primitive animism. Indra was the god of strength who was invoked to destroy the enemies. He was the god of thunder and was the rainmaker who was asked periodically to release the water. He could not be vanquished. Thus, thunder and rains, natural phenomenon, were related to his strength, which was personified in a masculine form, represented in god Indra. The concept of tribal chief who was warlord is also found represented in the character of Indra. Agni next is what was next to important to Indra was Agni. He was the god of fire. He was considered to be an intermediary between heaven and earth, that is, between gods and men. He dominated the domestic hearth, manages, and were solemnized in his presence. We still see that during the certain marriage functions, uh, there is a sacred fire that is being lit up, that is also known as havans, and then people circumnavigate it, and then that marriage is said to be complete after I think 6 or 7 circumnavigation sorry, 6 and 7 rounds. Circumnavigation is something different. He dominated, that is the Agni. He dominated domestic earth, and marriages and so on that were considered complete in its presence. So the importance of Agni can be related to that of yajna or sacrifice in the early Vedic society. It was supposed to suppose that oblation offered to Agni were carried to gods in form of smoke. Varuna personified water, and he was upholder of order of universe. Yama was the god of death, Yam, and had an influence in early Vedic religious beliefs. There were many other gods such as Surya, Soma, Savitri, Rudra, and host of celestial beings like Gandharvas, Apsaras, Maruts, to whom prayers and hymns were addressed in Rigveda. The Vedic religion was sacrificial in nature. Sacrifices or yajnas were performed to invoke God in order to grant boons, victory in battles, and for acquaintance of cattle, sons, etc. We find that some hymns dedicated to power residing in sacrificial implements, especially sacrificial altar, to stone used by pressing the soma plant, to weapons of war, drums, mortars, etc. Hymns and prayers were recited in these sacrifices, and generally priests performed these yajnas. The growing importance of sacrifices in Vedic society resulted in growing of importance as well. The ritual of sacrifice also led to the growth and development of knowledge of mathematics and anatomy. Previously, mathematics was necessary to make calculations, were also required to establish the position of various objects in sacrificial area. Also, the frequent sacrifices of animal led to the knowledge of anatomy. For the Vedic people, the world grew out of vast cosmic sacrifice. Religion was not based on magico ritual formulae. Rather, it was stressed direct communication with God through sacrifices, hymns, etc., in which we see this in contemporary times as well in many of the Abrahamic faiths that we still do sacrifices. Gods were gods were also not worshipped for the spiritual upliftment of people, nor for any other philosophical concept, but they invoke to grant material gain. Sacrificial religion is a religion of pastoral people, which many Abrahamic faiths are as well. Animal sacrifice is rampant in pastoral societies where the older animals, which can no longer produce milk or meat or used for breeding purposes, that is, those who are no longer economically viable, are killed in order to lessen the burden on the owner. Hence, animal sacrifice was one way of destroying the old animals and thus had an important role in the society. In the agrarian society, however, the older animals were employed in the field, used to use for traction purposes, and hence the destruction of animals is frowned upon by the society, which primarily depends upon agriculture activities. Thus, the Vedic religion reflected the patriarchal society and was materialistic in perspective. Now, dear students, this I will conclude by saying that this Vedic age is important part of ancient Indian history. You need to study it thoroughly and make an in-depth analysis. You should be making notes out of what is being conveyed to you and also asking some questions as well, as this has been a favorite area of Union Public Service Commission, especially with special reference to Indian Administrative Services exam prelims. So I will conclude that by saying that our knowledge about our past is very limited. We do not know much about Vedas. We have to explore more sources to develop understanding about Vedic age. We need value neutral authorities to study our ancient past. and not those authorities which are filled up with emotions that are racist in nature, especially in context of European scholars I am talking. We need to come out of colonial mindset again. We have to stop looking history as binaries, and the otherization of it in history with special reference to Davidians needs to be curtailed. Further, India's ancient Vedas were, I believe, the tradition of 5,000-year old, gilded by illumined seers living in harmony with nature, chanting Akrane mantras, and performing mysterious ritual fires, sacrifices. That was also known as yagds. The image of the Vedic world appears fascinating, but it is also difficult to understand, suggests perhaps a mystical fantasy about more than a belief sort of a thing. And they were right, and we need to investigate in a more comprehensive, sustained, and analytical way what Vedic age are. And still, there is much need to analyze upon what we have studied or what sources we have touched so far. So it is India as a culture and civilization of knowledge, both scientific and spiritual, both inner and outer, culminating in the supreme science of consciousness. Such a Vedic knowledge-based civilization is more than the information technology, though it can work with it and possibly transform it. Vedic knowledge is post-industrial and post-modern. One could say, though it comes to us from dawn of history, its vision is beyond time and space. Vedic knowledge represent not only the past but also the future of India. It helped in shaping the characteristic features of India's vast, enduring dharmic civilization through centuries. As first of all, created to teach Dharma. India's traditional philosophy, arts, sciences have strong Vedic connections. The Vedas were one of the main inscriptions for India's independence movement, particularly if you look at the works of Dayanand Saraswati, Lokmanya Tilak, Sri Aurobindo, and India's great gurus today continue to honor them. The Vedas are not religious books, they are much beyond it. Do not propose or do not say that they are just only should to religious activity. It should be the rational thinking as well. They directed us to discover divine within us, for which they provide the guidance and the practices for each of us to apply. Yet, this poignant image of Vedic living is but an introduction into a radically different worldview than our current high-tech society, invoking a cosmic vision that takes us beyond time space to the origins of universe, like modern physics, but in an experimental way within our own consciousness. So, with this, I am concluding and ending up my presentation. For this, I will acknowledge Oxford, the Indo-Aryan migration debate by Oxford Scholarship Quest for the Origins of Vedic Culture, the Vedic Culture Period Civilization, Aryan Buddhism, Jainism, and the Vedic Culture, the book Early Vedic Period India, Geographic Horizons of Vedic Aryans, that is a study page on internet, and the Vedic Religion, that is another book that has been authored by Professor Romila Thapa, if I am not wrong. So with this, I come to end of my presentation, and with the permission of the chair, may I end this presentation? Thank you. Thank you. Are
Now
there any
session
questions?
is open for question answer round.
Thank you. Are there any questions? I'm looking for it. Are there any questions, viewers? Excuse me for a while. Thank you. Okay, so there are some technical issues. So, with the permission of the chair, may I declare this session for today's value-added course closed? Thank you, chair. With the permission of the chair, I am declaring this session closed. Thank you.